Black like me. Black like me. Black like me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Hey, good people. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. I hope I don't sound like I'm repeating myself by saying I am absolutely loving season 11. The depths of conversations, the scintillating topics, the insight, the inspiration, the lessons that my guests have been sharing are just really wonderful. And one of the special things, the sweet spot of having the podcast is that I get to hear so many people's stories and what they dream of, what inspires them, and sharing them in these relationships in a broader context with you all who are part of who are the listeners of this podcast. And so today is no different. I have a very special guest. We've known each other for decades, and my guest is Dr. Emily Auerbach. We're going to be talking about a number of things, what her work is, what her reach is. But let me just tell you a little bit about her. Often when you have folks that are doing fantastic things, they send you short bios and say you don't have to read all of it. But I like to give flowers where they're due and celebrate my friends and their accomplishments. Emily Auerbach is an award-winning professor of English at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. You all know my alma mater. She also directs UW-Odyssey Project, a free, life-changing college humanities course for low-income students. In addition, Auerbach co-hosts University of the Air, a one-hour program broadcast statewide on Sundays on Wisconsin Public Radio. University of the Air features interviews with faculty in a variety of disciplines. She also developed the Courage to Write series of radio documentaries and written guides on women writers. In researching you, Dr. Auerbach, Emily, I forget that you do all these other things too. Emily Auerbach reaches hundreds of thousands of non-traditional students through lectures and book discussions at public libraries, elder hostels, prisons, retirement centers, schools, service clubs, as well as through courses taught through the mail and online. Over 4,000 people attended Jane Austen in the 21st Century, a 40-event festival that she directed for UW Center for Humanities. This interdisciplinary festival was honored with the 2001 Governor's Award in the Humanities. Emily Auerbach has received numerous other teaching, broadcasting, arts, and humanitarian awards for her work, including the Robert E. Gard Wisconsin Idea Foundation's Award for Excellence in 1998, the Van Hise Outreach Teaching Award, the Underkoffler Distinguished Teaching Award, and the Bartell Arts Award, as well as the Ohio State Broadcasting Award. Man, my chest just got tight saying all of those things. Emily, thank you so much for being a guest here on Black Like Me. Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I have to say that I am a longtime admirer of your work, not only with your congregation and with this podcast, but throughout the community, with your alma mater, with the Afro-American Studies program, and the Rising Black Center for Excellence that's being built.
Yes.
Your mother, who I knew,
Yes.
would be so incredibly proud. She was in her lifetime, but it's just been more and more, and I really want to commend you on the work you do.
Thank you.
Here and beyond.
Emily, that means so much to me. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to talk about how we connected recently when you asked me to be a commencement speaker. But let me just back up a bit. Do you remember how we met? It's so many years ago.
I don't. I remember meeting your mom because she came to the very first year of Odyssey. I started the program in 2003.
Yes.
And there were several members of the Fountain of Life Church who were accepted as students into the program, including one, Denise, who had actually applied to be our cook. And somehow I talked her into applying for the class instead because she was talking to me about how when she grew up in the Chicago housing projects, they somehow just, first of all, she was abused, she was hungry, she couldn't read properly, and they just
Right.
kind of passed her through the system, not recognizing that she had severe dyslexia. And it wasn't until she got to Madison that she went to the South Madison Library, started at first grade readers, and would go and ask the librarian for help with the words she didn't know, and worked her way up to novels. And I got goosebumps because this is
Yes.
exactly the kind of student that we are celebrating in the Odyssey Project, students who have gifts and potential but don't even know it. But she was very shy about coming to class, not sure she fit. Many people who start our college program are, reluctant to enter
Sure.
the room. They're afraid. And your mom seemed to be a mentor for her.
My mom loved
Yeah.
Denise,
And so
loved
she
her.
would come to class, and I don't remember how I met you. But
I didn't know
remember-
mom was doing all of that. You mentioned that to me recently, and that makes me feel really, really proud because she loves education and she's the type of person who would have enrolled in the program. But she became connected because of Denise. But one of your students, Anthony Ward,
Oh, yes, he was in our first year.
he was in
as
it.
well.
Okay, so that's around the same time that mom started. Okay, now that explains how mom and Anthony got to know each other so well. So Anthony said, "Hey, Pastor G, do you know Emily Auerbach?" And it's so funny because people like in the community never call you Emily. It's always first and last name. So I always know it's you and they talk about like, do you know Emily Auerbach? And I said, no. He says, she's like you. This is how he described you. He said, just like you serve people inside the church, she has this mission and ministry to help people believe in themselves. And by getting them to take college level course, and I couldn't wrap my brain around that. I mean, I was a former UW advisor and admissions counselor. So I hadn't seen community-based programs from the university. But he kept saying that you've got to meet her. So I think between Anthony talking about you and Denise enrolling, because Denise was a cook in our Nehemiah program.
Yes,
She's a good cook.
she is.
She's a better scholar, but she's she's a really good cook. And she lived in an apartment complex that my mom managed. And so mom loved her. Denise had bouts of just it was just so many things. And mom would go in her apartment, pull her drapes back, and say, "You're getting out of this bed today." And she would just ride around the car while mom drove to pay bills and things like that. So when she got involved, mom really got involved as well. So I learned about you by word of mouth, by someone who was definitely very active in our congregation, but felt that the level of the work of the Odyssey Project conjured within him a sense of calling, and that it felt like ministry to him because it elevated people into their purpose. And to me, to have someone in our context regard your work that way speaks so much about what you did and who you are. So I really appreciate the room that you made for up and coming scholars, but also the room for folks who've always loved education and who've always loved mentoring people like my mom. I'm finding out since her passing all of these things that she did. Not that as a son I should know everything that she did, but to find that she had her own places for giving back and connecting really makes me feel good. So thank you for also making room for folks like my mom in your program.
Well, she added so much. And as you know, Anthony now has his master's degree.
Yes,
from
he
UW,
does.
And another one of your members, Corey Saffold,
He's finishing his
is
last
finishing
year.
law school.
Yes.
And he applied for the first year, and I didn't accept him at that time, but he applied again and was in our third year. And, we have so many stories of transformation. Students who were homeless when they came into Odyssey, sleeping on the floor of a barber shop with their kids, who now have their UW degrees. One of them, Kina, is now a landlord, giving property to others, and she has business of her own.
And she just went through our Nehemiah Leadership Institute.
She's amazing.
She's
And
amazing.
She's a poet, and her older son that was sleeping on the floor of the barbershop with her is in college now.
Really?
And, I think one of the things that I love about doing the Odyssey Project for the past 23 years is that we're now seeing the family impact. I've worked with 3 generations of the same family now, 4 in one case, where if you put one student into a program, just like my mom was a first-generation college student coming out of Appalachia, if you put one person in a college access program, it changes not only their life, but the lives of so many other generations and relatives.
Wow, that's so powerful. I love the way that you brought your own story into this work. And so I'd love just to have you talk a little bit more about it. You mentioned, and I know as I've just done some research on you, your mom grew up in Appalachia, the first person in her family to go to college or to even understand what college was.
Yeah, they were actually opposed to her going because it seemed like something, an outside thing. But my mom was a avid reader, and teachers told her about. She was born 12 miles outside of Knoxville with no running water. Had to walk miles to reach the bookmobile. But teachers saw that she had this love of reading and told her about a school in Kentucky called Berea College. See, I grew up thinking Berea was like everywhere, but there's like only one
Right.
college where you have to be poor to go there. It's it's a Christian
I
school
love
designed
that.
for Appalachian youth. My mom arrived at Berea with a wardrobe that consisted of one skirt and two shirts. If someone said you have to buy a textbook, she would have had to go home. There was no money. All the students at Berea worked jobs like doing laundry, or she was a waitress.
Because there was no tuition, correct?
No tuition at all. And it was 90% sort of Appalachian type students. And then they had 10% others for diversity. And my father was a Holocaust survivor.
Sure.
And he came to Berea as a refugee. His story of poverty was that, where you have to flee a country and you lose everything.
Because his parents were both attorneys, right?
Yeah, they were lawyers in Berlin, and they fled the country, honestly, the Gestapo came in the front door and my grandfather went out the back, literally.
Wow.
So they escaped the concentration camps, but they suffered a lot between
Of course.
leaving Berlin and then arriving at New York City. And my dad's, who's 96, is still going strong.
I saw him at the commencement exercise.
Playing piano.
Playing piano.
He still chokes up when he sees the Statue of Liberty. And he's appalled by the things in today's news that show that we're not welcoming
Exactly.
to immigrants, that we're not embracing others and diversity. I think, he stands as an example of someone who transcends boundaries. There was opposition to my parents' marriage on both sides. You have Christian
Sure.
and Jewish, but they
Sure.
were married for 62 years until my mother's passing in 2012. And it taught me that what
Amazing.
matters is love, spirituality, ethics, what you do with your life, how you treat other
Sure,
people,
sure.
not some label you put on yourself. My father, since in the years since my mother's passing, has really devoted his life to playing music at retirement centers for people with memory problems. Because how, like, even if you can't recognize your relatives, can't form a sentence, if somebody starts playing a tune, you'll hum along.
You're telling someone who knows. I would play the Dells for my mom, and she would say, "Oh," and start snapping her finger and swooning and rocking back and forth. So you have been working at UW in the English department. How long were you there before you thought about the Odyssey Project?
Sure. So I actually started as a professor in what was then UW Extension as an assistant professor of English.
Sure.
That merged and became the Division of University Outreach. And then the English department picked up 20% of my position. But for over 40 years now, I've been
Wow.
an English professor specializing in non-traditional students, in students who are not traditional age sitting in a classroom, but I've taught in the back of grocery stores, in prison, in retirement centers, converting materials into Braille, finding ways to take what the university does and spread it to others. That's what I see as the best of the Wisconsin idea.
Yes.
And so when I heard about the Odyssey Project, which I heard about from my Wisconsin Public Radio colleague, Jean Faraka, she had heard about the Clementi course in the humanities.
Right.
And wanted to start something like it in Madison. It's a great works course for adults at the poverty level, but I knew from my parents' story that a great works course wasn't enough. I wanted a full liberal arts education, because if somebody had given my mom an introduction to Plato and Shakespeare and sent her back to Appalachia, that would not have done it. So from the beginning, we've tied our program into UW-Madison and tried to see it as an on-ramp and helped our students like Anthony, like Denise, like Corey, go all the way to whatever their dream was.
And at the time, Emily, how unique was that in the country?
Well, the Clementi courses had shown that you could change people's perceptions of themselves and their world if you introduced them to great works of philosophy, history, art, and literature. Berea showed that you could give people a chance if you had the endowment to do that. I think our program is unique in taking a whole family approach.
Exactly.
We've had, from the beginning, free childcare, but we turned that childcare into enrichment. We have graduates of our Odyssey Junior program who now have gone through UW-Madison. And I started Odyssey Senior so that elders can come. And we had, first of all, I brought my dad at 96, but I also had older students and their parents, including Sarah Wells, who got her HSED at age 92, became the first person of that age to get her high school.
Wait, that's
diploma.
Mary. That's Mary's mom.
Mary's mom.
I always knew her as Mrs. Wells.
Mrs. Wells.
No. So when you said her first name, I forgot who that was.
So that's a good example of a 4-generational contact, because Mary Wells was in our Odyssey class of 07.
Sure.
And then she also had nephew and nieces that went through the program. And she had a grandson in our junior program, and then her mom in our senior.
That's amazing.
And what I really like is just we serve everyone from newborns, literally, up through people in their 90s,
Sure.
all loving learning and all feeling that they're somehow badgers.
Definitely. Was there pushback in your department when you talked about, you work for Extension, so you would think that this is what Extension does. But I'm curious, was there any pushback about you're taking courses out to the community so far away from the campus? Because that's very non-traditional.
Can I sound a little cynical? Is that
Please, you can. That's what makes this show so cutting edge. Please, be cynical.
So
Downright sarcastic if you want to.
Okay. So when I first started working to put together a way to offer the course, and we found the Harambee Center was going to be the place that we could do it, and I wanted to have college credit and teach it that way. It took me over 2 years to raise the money and get the institutional support to start it. And from the beginning, there were these naysayers who said, if you are going to teach Socrates and Emily Dickinson and William Blake, no one's going to want to take poor people are not going to want to take your course. There was just a lot of skepticism. And I guess I knew from my family story, I knew from people I had met in the community that wasn't the case. And in fact, the first time we opened up applications and we were partnering with the South Madison Library to do so, we had 80 applicants for those 30 spots. This year, without even recruiting, I had 150 applicants for 30 spots. There's always more demand.
Wow.
And we're trying to do some things with the people that get turned away, so they're also finding another path. But then when the class succeeded and we had the high graduation rates and
Yes.
stories of success, one of the same administrators, and she's no longer around, that's okay, but one of the same administrators that had been such a gate closer at the time did an interview with a reporter where she said, yes, we go where the people are. So now, that the program has succeeded, there is widespread campus support for it. We've been lucky with 3 or 4 of the last chancellors being part of our graduation, supporting the program, speaking about it. And I think when you see something that works, why not get on board?
Why not get on board? You certainly have touched upon key components of the Odyssey Project. But just for my listeners who are loving what they're hearing, what's your elevator speech? If someone says, so what do you do? And you say, I run the Odyssey Project. And they would ask you, what does that entail and what does it do? How would you respond to that? How would you describe it?
Odyssey is a free college jumpstart course for adults near the poverty level. We help students find their voices and achieve their dreams. That's what
Bam.
it's about.
Oh, it gets me. It's still so
And we
powerful.
have over 700 alumni of the program now. And we've also got a part of our
700.
program called Odyssey Beyond Bars
Yes.
in 4 Wisconsin prisons, where for the first time in over 100 years, students were able in our writing courses at Oak Hill to earn UW-Madison credit. We now are in Taycheedah Women's Prison,
Sure.
as well as in Racine and Columbia. And growing out of that program also came a statewide initiative where called the Prison Education Initiative, where students are earning degrees in
Yes.
prison.
For folks who are listening, you may not realize this, but a number of years ago, a number of state prisons, including Wisconsin, stopped offering GED or high school equivalency training in prison. You used to watch movies and people studied and became lawyers or what have you inside prison. That has not been the case in Wisconsin state prisons for many years. So, but kudos to you and your tenacity and your team in getting a program like this into the prisons. That is not an easy feat. I'm curious. Who gave you greater pushback, the university or state prisons? Granted, you had decades of experience and success when you brought it to Wisconsin prisons. But I'm a meddler. I want to ask, pushback between the campus and the prison. What was more difficult?
Well, Peter Moreno arrived here in Madison to direct our Odyssey Beyond Bars program because before he came from Seattle, where he was working with the Innocence Project there, we had enrichment courses, non-credit things in the prison.
Gotcha.
But when he came, he really worked with the Department of Corrections, and there was a grant to the UW system where they didn't know what to do with it. And so I think, the tenacity was Peter's in pushing against various limits. I know when I went to teach at Oak Hill as part of this program, every single thing gets scrutinized. Like we had the wrong kind of pens. You can't have retractable pens. We used to have a prison library project where we could take books in, and now because of drug smuggling and other things, there's just all these things you have to do to get any materials into the prison.
Sure,
it's not easy,
No,
for
it's
sure.
not.
But I think those in the prison have seen the transformative difference and how the students in the program, it gives them hope. It actually elevates their behavior. So, and we have now, one of the exciting things, we've now had 2 of our Odyssey students here in Madison come out of our Odyssey Beyond Bars program in Oak Hill
Wow.
Prison, get released, and then get credit in our course. And one of them, we just graduated his daughter last year. So again, the family
daughter,
effect.
yeah, of
and she wants
course.
to be a veterinarian. It's just amazing when you have students who came out of a background where they were told literally, I should tell you about Shar. Okay, we had a student,
My friend Shar.
Shar Braxa. She was told by a Madison High School guidance counselor, "You are not college material." And she internalized that. And it wasn't until she was at the South Madison Library and saw one of our Odyssey brochures that said, "Start your journey for free to college for free," that she applied and sort of found her gifts. So not only did Shar go through our program, but she graduated from Madison College with honors. She's at UW-Madison.
And what does she do this? And what does she do
And
this summer?
She traveled to China for our first Odyssey student to be in the International Study Abroad program. And so I'm getting these pictures of Shar at the Great Wall. She wrote a poem in which she invites that guidance counselor to come with her to China. And
She needs to.
but that's, again, someone told you are not college material, who now is, I just love picturing Shar changing China, just as she's changing W.
Right.
And it's so evil, honestly evil, for anyone to make a student feel that because of the color of their skin or their lack of money, lack of connections, that they're not college material.
I was told that too, right at West High School. I was told that I was not university material, that I should go to junior college. And Lexi, my daughter, just got her master's degree from Wisconsin, graduated with honors. She was told that Wisconsin would not admit her, so don't even apply. So it's still, and her parents and grandmother have degrees from Wisconsin. I remember growing up, and Shar was a badass. Like, she's the kind of kid, if you saw Shar coming down the street, you'd cross the street. She could fight any guy her age or size. And she just had a roughness about her. And I just know things happen in life, but then to pour gasoline on that fire to say, you're not college material. I knew her when she was in that wandering phase. I saw her. I knew her. I knew her family. We grew up together. We went to school together. We went to Lincoln together in middle school. We go back 50 years. And when she told me about her upcoming trip to China, I said, wait a minute, Char, let me get my phone. And I don't know if you saw this. I said, Char, say something in Chinese. And so she started talking, and I recorded it. I posted it on Instagram. I got so many comments. I said, this is a friend of mine who didn't think she was college material. She's about to spend 6 weeks or so in China. Never give up on your dreams. But she was inspiring people through social media because she was beaming. I've never seen Shar Braxton that excited.
It's great. And her mom and sister were in Odyssey Senior.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So Miss B?
Miss B, talking about early Madison experiences they've had.
Oh my goodness. That is really exciting. Well, I saw Shar at the commencement exercise. And so that might be just another place just to jump in. That's where you and I connected. My listeners know that I'm in the midst of raising money for this Center for Black Excellence in Cultures. Tens of millions of dollars. It's eating all my time, turning my hair gray. It's a good process. We're finding success. But I just sort of have this practice mantra. No, I can't. I'm sorry. Not now, some other time. But when I got your note and you explained what was going on, and then you reminded me that my mom had been involved in the early stages and how significant this commencement was. I said, I gotta make this work. And because I just finished my tenure teaching a first course as an adjunct, it finished the Wednesday before commencement. Otherwise, I would have had a conflict. And so I could actually do that on that date. And Emily, I was floored. I walked into Great Hall. I remember these ceremonies being like at Harambe or places. I remember going to them in the past. But Great Hall, I mean, that's where campus goes when it has a huge, a guest lecture or someone. And there was food and it was packed and the energy was there. But as people started talking and sharing their stories and just seeing the group support, come on, you can do it, because you could tell who was shy and who was gregarious. But the sense of pride as each person talked, I think there was one woman who had a child during Odyssey, came back to finish the program.
She actually was in active labor while we were talking about Socrates.
Oh, yeah.
She went from a classroom discussion of Socrates to the hospital and realized, that was actually labor. I kept thinking she was like really struggling with Socrates.
I loved it. And then, so I'm sitting at the stage, and then to the left, there's this elderly gentleman playing the piano. And then you told me, that's my dad. So I have video of your dad playing piano. My wife and I just have one child, a daughter, and we have a real close relationship. And so I loved looking down the road saying, here's a dad and daughter still hanging out and doing, still doing things together. But that evening, to talk about the importance of education and its ability to change one's life or one's family's life in the midst of people whose lives have been changed, not only by education, but education a la Project Odyssey, was just really an honor. To get there and tell a bit of that story, about how education changed things for Mom. I mean, there was no Odyssey back then. Everything was on campus. The beauty of what Odyssey does, and I say this as an alum, but also as a former recruiter for Wisconsin. I finished high school, went to the university. I was young. I was 17. I lived at home here in South Madison. But I remember sitting in classes with 600 students in the agricultural hall, ag hall, 600 students in an econ class. And I was one of 3 students in that whole space. And Odyssey, but because I grew up in Madison, it wasn't totally a distraction, but it was. And on a greater scale, because classrooms were so much smaller in high school. But when I went into the Odyssey spaces and saw students sitting with students who looked like them, and having a chance to realize that they were sharp, that they were scholars, because even though I took the same kinds of classes at UW-Madison during the day, during the more standard way of doing things, I never felt like I was smart. I was never in rooms with people like me. Even the chair of the Afro-Am department was Bill Vanderberg. He's a brilliant scholar, but he's a white gentleman. So I couldn't sit down and talk to him about how the literature that I'm reading, how reading, Zora Neale Hurston or reading Kane I couldn't talk about how Puddinghead Wilson made me feel as a black person because he wouldn't get it. He wouldn't understand it. And so I didn't realize or even think that I was smart until I got into my graduate program to see students working so hard for 6 credits, knowing that they're smart, being exposed to some of the classics and being able to bring their own voices to it was a gift that I didn't receive as a kid who went right from graduation to UW-Madison a few months later. Their sense of identity and intelligence and the rightfulness of being in that space far exceeded what I experienced in my first 3 years at UW-Madison.
Well, and we loved having you, by the way, as our graduation speaker.
Oh,
And it
thank
means
you.
a lot to the students to know that the community's behind them and to see examples of someone who went through UW and made it and is doing something with their life. I guess, I feel that the students have so many more gifts than they know. We had one student who had started doodling in prison and, drawing in prison. And he was doodling in my class, which at first I thought, hey, don't you want to?
Right.
But then I looked and there were these amazing drawings. And so Stanley ended up getting a graphic design degree and going on to have an art exhibit. He didn't even know he was good at art, but then he did an exhibit on Black icons. And we read, that was one difference I made with the Clementi courses. I wanted the classics, sure, but also Frederick Douglass and Maya Angelou and, students read about lives more like their own. Or Langston Hughes, they get the complete works. And I had a husband-wife who said they put the complete poems of Langston Hughes in their glove compartment. And if they got stuck at a traffic jam, or they were in a doctor's office in a waiting room, they would just randomly open and read each other a poem out of the collection. And I don't know where I was going with that, but anyway, I think that having multicultural subjects, and we have Christy Clark Pajara come in,
Yes.
and Baron Kelly does theater work with our
Yes.
students, helps them get up and act, and talks to them about his own background of coming out of Harlem, where most of the guys he grew up with are dead,
Right.
or in prison.
Sure.
And just the value of education when people somehow write you out of the picture,
Sure.
don't give you a seat at the table.
Sure. Man, oh man, is it crazy out here. And I don't think it's just me. Look, it's 2025. Trump is back in office, and some days it seems as if the sky is falling. There's so much uncertainty in the world right now, but I love that sitting down right here in front of this mic and letting the hard truths rumble out of my heart and off my chest is as certain as it ever was. Season 11 is gathering steam, and you're in for a real treat. Let me just tell you. When I reflect back on all of the seasons that we dropped here at Black Like Me podcast, each of them has had a special purpose, a one-of-a-kind lineup of guests, and its own unique field. I also think about the thread that binds them all together. What we do here at Black Like Me is unique. I don't have another space that feels just like this, where I can really speak from my unique perspective. And the guests who have on the show remark that these interviews they do here are unlike any others that they've done in other places. Sure, nobody else does Black Icebreakers, but that's only part of it. We have created a truly unique space here where honest conversations about the thoughts, the ideas, the policies that affect Black people and that Black people care deeply about. And you know what? It isn't easy. And I don't do this all alone. I have an incredible team that has steadily grown over the years, and each person that joins adds another asset to what we can do here. And all of you that support us on Patreon, my people, my people, my people. We simply would not be able to do what we do or get what we have gotten without you. So as we look to even bigger and better things in the coming season, please help support the show right now by clicking the link to Patreon in the show notes and join the community of people supporting this unique and provocative space. in the world that we're living in, where there's so much attack on our perspectives, our history, our bodies, and our lives and contributions, aren't you glad you have a place where you can still hear powerful, exhilarating, intellectual Black thought like you do? I enjoy it. And so if you do too, share the good news, tell friends, click that Patreon link now. Thank you so much for your support of Black Like Me podcast with Dr. Alex G. You know, I would assume, Emily, that your parents were finished with their college education by the time you grew up. And so it's not like you watched them going to college, but yet you hold the value of that free tuition experience. I mean, my daughter grew up in our home, but she has no desire to be a pastor. She does service in other ways. She's a librarian. But you're an educator, and you're so inspired by your parents' work. When did that become your own? Was that at the dinner table? Was it watching how they talked about it? Because not everyone emulates what they see in their home. So your parents had this Berean experience, and then here you are creating what's now known as, I would call a UW institution. Where did that connect for you?
So, my mother graduated valedictorian from Berea, and then both parents went on to Columbia. My dad became a scientist, professor of science, which is what brought them to UW. My mom started as a social worker with a master's in social work, but then went back to school in her 40s, became a librarian. So first of all, that older student going back to school.
Sure.
And she remained, despite her gifts, very shy. Like her hands would tremble if she had to talk in public. So I'm aware, and she was always self-conscious about sort of hillbilly speech, her accent, and the way people judged her as dumb. I think my parents' background, first of all, the religious persecution that came so close to wiping out my dad's family. My mom, in the sense of people looking down at Appalachian hillbilly types. They both valued each human life and the potential there. And so I guess for me, I really like education that breaks down walls.
Yes.
My favorite quote, and we got so many of them, but my favorite quote from an Odyssey student is the one who said, "The Odyssey Project helped me unwrap my gifts and rewrite the story of my life."
That was so powerful.
Because the gifts are there. We are unwrapping them, but we're not. I mean, one of the things I didn't like about the book by the Clementi director was it was called Riches for the Poor. And that implied, here we come with our Plato and Shakespeare, you lucky poor people, let's pour our riches into you. But see, I see Shar and Anthony and Denise and Corey as having such gifts inside that they needed an opportunity. They needed a place to unfold those and unwrap those gifts.
Yes. Odyssey is open to anyone who qualifies based upon economic realities. Did you imagine that so many African Americans would go through the program? I mean, you look back now, 24 years. Did you imagine? I mean, as graduation, it's just so many Black and brown people. But did you imagine so many African Americans being drawn to the program, considering the curriculum?
Well, I guess I would say that we have about 95% of our students are coming from communities of color. If you target poverty, then you target racial injustice. That's the bottom line.
Yes.
And so
that's a quote.
I mean, we don't say we're a program about diversity, but we're about as diverse as you can get, because people, who are coming from backgrounds like Shar did, they don't have the same access. They don't have the same ability to pay for college. I had one student who told me that college seemed like a chess game, that it looked like a good game, but nobody had told him the rules about what the bishop did and the rook. And first generation students struggle sometimes to fit in, and if they fail on campus, sometimes they give up more easily. So I think what Odyssey tries to do, and we've been told our secret sauce is love. I know that's mushy.
No,
but
it's not.
Honestly,
It's real.
If you have 30 people come into your class and they start telling their stories and writing, and we do a student newsletter where they put their stories there, if they share that and they find that the classmates care, the teachers all care, and that it's not going to end at the end of the semesters, it's going to keep going for life, then you have this community, this solid support, and this sense of love. Somebody cares. You know, a lot of our students come out of foster care, or they've been abused, traumatized, been incarcerated, domestic violence, all that. And coming into a class where you can start fresh, share your stories, have them listen to, and and find a voice.
Sure.
That makes a big difference.
I hope this doesn't sound mushy, Emily, but how do you find the students and the value in students that have been so discarded by society? I mean, I was around when Shar was looked at with disdain. I grew up thinking, I don't want to be like that kid. I don't want to be in trouble. I don't want to be constantly fighting in the hallways and sent home. I think about Corey's experience. I think about Denise's. I think about Anthony's. You're interacting with people who were deemed incorrigible and were completely turned off by the educational systems. And you're watching them move into law school and master's degrees at the University of Wisconsin. Madison, how are you seeing what secondary educational institutions are missing?
Well, there's a poem by Langston Hughes called PhD, where he writes about this boy who does everything right and gets his PhD, but knows nothing. And then
My grandmother talked about those people.
he knows nothing about the big waves of life, and there's all this wide world that he doesn't understand. And I think, yes, we are an educational program, and we're proud of our students who go on to get bachelor's and master's degrees. We just got one who is a doctor of dentistry, and one's applying for medical school. I'm all in favor of the academic achievements, but there are these other intangible signs of success, where somebody simply feels better about themselves, is more likely to vote, and we are very actively involved in get out the vote stuff, or who finds their voice in art, other ways. Well, for example, the barber that let Keena sleep on his floor at night when she was homeless, he was a graduate of our program. He's the one who told her about it. He didn't go on to get a college degree, but he turned his barber shop into a cultural hub with pictures of Malcolm X and others on the wall. And he would, while he was doing boys' hair, he would talk to them about the value of being in school. He got a Community Unsung Hero Award. He started similar work now in Arizona. But that matters too.
Of course.
And there's many different ways to measure success. So I think, first of all, by bringing my family in, and my husband's acts out Ebenezer Scrooge.
Your daughter does the newsletter, right?
She does the newsletters.
The other daughter edits it. And your son plays viola.
And my son plays the viola and comes into class. I mean, I bring my whole family and family story in, so that it's not a us-them thing. It's like, look, we're here. People might have written you off in the past, but let's look at what brings us together. Some students remain very shy for a long time, but theater helps bring out that voice, or maybe an assignment that asks them to find a piece of fabric with meaning and bring it into class and write about it. And for some, it's a baby blanket for a baby they lost.
Sure.
And if you're sitting in a room with 30 people and someone's sharing a painful story like that, it just pulls you together. That's what the humanities do.
Yeah, you found the secret sauce in that.
Even metaphors. I had a student who we have them all do an art project where they have to represent themselves visually and then also write about it. And she couldn't figure out what to do. She actually sat next to where my office is and did it right there on a desk. But she pictured her life as a revolving door. And she said that just as she was starting to get out of the door, her friends still on drugs dragged her back. And she told me later that it wasn't until she did that art project that she was able to get off drugs. That it wasn't until she envisioned herself trapped in a revolving door that she could change her life. So a metaphor can change your life.
Yes, it can.
That's why reading Plato's allegory of the cave and finding out caves you've been in, that you've been fettered and not seeing reality, things like that are powerful in ways I think no one imagines.
And life-altering.
Yeah, absolutely.
Currently we're experiencing such an attack on educational institutions. I'm curious where that how that impacts Odyssey Project, and does that cause an unnecessary struggle for you and for your work?
I think it has been terrible for our students, especially those who are from undocumented
Sure.
backgrounds here, who are doing amazing work but know that they might be deported and need to put in place safety plans. Right. I think all of our students are horrified by the way history is being rewritten or hidden.
Yes.
Right at the point when we're trying to get them involved in looking at their history, they see what's happening nationally to try to obscure the
Right.
facts, to take out things. And it's been different this last half year for sure. And then we just finished 2 federal grants, but had we not already finished them, those would have probably been terminated.
Wow.
And I have colleagues whose federal grants were terminated simply because they had the word Latina in the title.
And I just never thought we'd go back in time like this, Emily.
No, these are challenging times, but it makes me more determined than ever to do what we're doing.
We have listeners from every state in the union and around the country, and if it's all right with you, I want to put a link to Odyssey in it so that folks want to learn more, who'd like to donate, who were helped by similar programs and been wondering how to give back. I want them to be able to support your work. I'm curious if you have any special insights, or if you've noted special insights that particularly the students of color might have brought to the classic, like as they talk about things or interpret the data. Are there insights that you heard that caused you to say, I never thought about Plato that way. I never thought about the Odyssey this way. They brought up something I'm an English professor. I've never thought about that. Have you experienced that?
Every
Really?
class I go home with new ideas. Also, the writing they do. I grew up in Madison. I'm a graduate of Madison West, and I kind of
class
thought,
of 81, Madison Bloom.
I thought, Madison progressive liberal.
Sure,
so
we know it.
Through my students' stories, I've just come to see how we are. 2 cities. There are 2 Madisons,
Yes, there
and
are.
there's so much injustice. The city was even built and designed architecturally to keep poor people out of the view of those who were like professionals. And it's just geographically where you have the south side or the east side as lower income, supposed to be blue collar or minority populations. I'm horrified by my own city. And so, I've become much more outraged every day that I read stories that the students share about how they've been treated, how their family's been treated. It's, those stories need to be told, especially those of the elders and what they went through.
Yes.
And then of the new students of what they're still experiencing. Those stories need to be there.
Yes. You've witnessed the trajectory of maybe nervous or anxious students on day one, and then how they sprout, how they bloom. But some of those folks I've known since childhood. I've known Sherry Bester for decades. I officiated James and Sherry's wedding. I dedicated their kids. And so to know the pre-Odyssey struggles and to watch just the arc of if we're watching a movie, we would talk about the arc of character of that character. It's so amazing. And when we think about lifting or uplifting a community, so often the focus in society is through human services. Let me give you a backpack. Let me give you supplies. And people are hungry. They have those needs. I received those kinds of services growing up, and through Nehemiah, we provided them. So I would not sit here and try to bash those efforts, but to think about how you uplift a community and a family through literature, through through the Iliad, through Homer, through Plato. It's just, I keep coming back around to it. I just think it's such a unique way because it honors the brain, it honors the curiosity, and it reminds us, like your mom said when you were doing that interview about, did I answer this right? Why would someone poor want to read the classics? And she said something to the effect, well, honey, we're all human. And this gets at our basic
Those
needs
at the poverty level are
closest to the injustice.
Yeah, I have to say Odyssey also has wraparound support because
Definitely.
Shakespeare and Socrates don't pay the rent. They don't put food on the table very quickly.
Right.
And so 3 years into the program, I started a separate 501c3 nonprofit called Friends of Odyssey because I had a student who broke his glasses and he couldn't see the homework. And my university money would allow me to buy him 20 more books he could see, but not fix those glasses. So the Friends of Odyssey, we can do that. We can, buy a gas card or, help with the kinds of life struggles, put food in the refrigerator when it's COVID and the mom can't get out anywhere.
Is that the link that we can share in our
If
podcast
just the
notes?
Odyssey link, it goes to the support page, which includes Friends of Odyssey,
Okay.
it includes our regular project fund, and it includes our prison fund. So I've had to learn a lot about how,
Emily, wow.
because I'm just an English major. I'm not good with budgets and, the whole business world and all that. But we have a whole team now at Odyssey, including our success coach, Brian Benford, who's a graduate of our '07 class. Brian served as alderman, and he's now
I remember him, of course.
Brian, and he's working full-time now as our social worker success coach, helping others in the program find those housing resources, knowing what to do if your partner is beating you, working with those challenges outside. Because, yes, we go after the intellectual and the academic, but we're a whole family approach, and we've got to meet those outside needs. And as you know, there's just not good, affordable housing or the appropriate
Right.
services that people need who are trying to get ahead.
Right. Tell me about a teacher or a mentor in your childhood. It sounds like your parents were great mentors, but let's just say outside of your immediate family. Is there a teacher or mentor from your childhood who you can remember really helping you to see something great inside of you?
Honestly, I would just, again, not to sidestep the question exactly, but because I did have a lot of teachers that made me not like English. And I was actually majoring in music and going on in that. I fell in love with the books and the way you can become somebody else when you're reading. My mom used to take us to the Madison Public Library with a giant cardboard box, and we would come home with free library books. And honestly, I think the power of reading is probably what broke her out of the narrow poverty life that she had in Appalachia. Because when you read, you can become Anne Frank, you can become an escaped slave, you can kind of imagine yourself in another world. And they've shown that reading, promotes empathy. So I have to say that, the journey into books and seeing what they
Sure.
could do probably had more of a effect, because my English teachers made me want to, not all of them, and if they're listening, I love you, but please donate. But really, honestly, it was my mother's love of books and my parents' belief in human potential that
Wow.
really is the model for me.
Wow. I also appreciate the fact that you stayed so focused and on point for this. I mean, I'm a social entrepreneur. And as I'm building the center, people are already putting calls in to me saying, so are you going to have a plan to franchise this so you can begin thinking about how to help Centers for Black Excellence in other cities and other communities, which sounds fun, it's sexy, it's alluring. But if you get spread too thin, you might miss the opportunity to really go deep on what's right in front of you. What's kept you so focused and on point, staying the course for the work that you're doing here, and not doing something similar in Michigan or being invited to DC to work for, some bureaucrat?
First of all, we are modeled in part after Clementi courses that
Sure.
already are in different places, but we have had people visit here to see how can they take that back to somewhere else. And I've spoken at Stanford and in Illinois and in Tennessee and other places where I love the idea that some place could take some of the ideas and run with it in their own way. You have to kind of model it to what fits where you are.
Right. Every community is
Yeah,
different.
you can't just import something and just, put it the same way.
Right.
But I think, the prison program is spreading, and we are in touch with people from all over who are trying to make a difference.
So it sounds like you're encouraging others to think about their context and grow, but I shouldn't say you haven't been tempted. You have not been successfully tempted to leave what you're doing here in Madison to go do something someplace else. You have just stayed the course for, almost a quarter century, and then all the work you did in the English department and the extension before that. That's just commendable when people who are doing things of the caliber of your work and they stay the course and keep their nose to the grindstone, as the saying goes, and you're continuing to do this here where you can see the great-grandchildren of people who you worked with or supported or learned with decades ago. That's just very commendable.
Well, and we got a team that'll carry it forward into the next, quarter century as well. Also, Wisconsin has such a terrible record for achievement gap and for
Yes.
unfair incarceration. We're worst in the nation. So I figure if we can make something work here, it
Here,
should
here.
send a message.
Here,
It
here.
could be anywhere.
That's what I say with my work here. If we can make it here, we can make it anywhere. Last question. We all know that it's a very chaotic time in the academy. What kinds of things do you do to take care of yourself?
Well, I have a 4-generation family, so I have 3 adult children, but three grandchildren, ages 8, almost 13, and 17, and my dad at 96 lives next door to us. So family helps, and living in nature and going out on Lake Mendota in a boat and
Yes.
forgetting about everything.
I love it. I love it. I love that. Oh, listen, my special guest has been Dr. Emily Auerbach. Emily, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your wisdom, but for sharing your talents with this community. We are a richer community because of it, and I know and love and pastor and care for the folks who you've created space for. And so I'm not paid advertisement. I'm not reading this out of your brochure. I've seen the lives of the people up close who you've made room for, and I want you to know that they are deeply touched and have been impacted by your work, and so have I because of that. And I just want to thank you again for the work that you do.
Thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Thank you. Hey, listen, folks, I want you to check out our new public-facing group on Facebook. Come and join the conversation, or just take a look at what others are talking about. We have interesting conversations like the one you just heard, but you don't have to turn it off. You can let that conversation continue, and so please do that. Let me also offer up a thanks to my wonderful team, Eli Steenlich, Jeremy Holliday, who produce and edit the show, Don Thornton, who secures our great guests, Ariana Proctor, who curates and moderates our listener space, and Jakisha Hunt, who handles our wonderful podcast merch. And finally, to all of you who are listeners, thank you for making this a priority, for taking time to listen to this. I just trust that it's enriching your lives and drawing you closer to the kinds of stories that help you become the kind of people you want to become. And to those special folks who are my Patreon supporters, you are the folks who donate for as little as $2 a month to make sure that we have equipment. We can handle all the logistical stuff that we need to bring this excellent podcast to you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. To the others, take a moment now to do something about what you've heard. Either make a decision to go to the Facebook page, do it now, write a review, share this, repost it on social media, or click that link, because everyone can do something. But help us to do by doing whatever you can to make sure that this podcast continues to come to you with this great level of quality and professionalism. So listen, take what you've heard today, lean into it, be transformed by it, because we need to be the kind of people that we want to see more of in our world. So have a great day, and thank you so much for being the best part of Black Like Me podcast with Dr. Alex G.
Black like me. Black like me.
I want to thank you for taking time to listen to this episode of Black Like Me podcast with Dr. Alex G. If you like that opening track of our theme song, you can show your appreciation to Corey Saffold, who created that and produced it, and Marcus Fleming, my cousin, who's on vocals. I also want to say that this podcast was started with the generous support of the Human Family Unity Foundation, and so we always want to stop and thank them for that. For the many patrons who support us through our Patreon page, thank you, thank you, thank you. You don't just listen, but you support, you lean in, and you help this podcast to be what it is. And then I need to thank you, the listeners, who make a point of downloading this, listening to it, and sharing it. Without all of you, this podcast would not be what it is and what it's becoming. Thank you so much.